When I first moved into Willow Creek Estates, I had high hopes for a peaceful life. The neighborhood was picturesque, with tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and houses that looked like they belonged in a magazine. But little did I know, the real drama was hidden behind those pristine facades. My first encounter with Margaret Hayes, the self-proclaimed queen of the Homeowners Association, HOA, was less than pleasant. She arrived at my doorstep with a binder thicker than a dictionary, filled with rules and regulations that seemed more like a list of ways to make my life miserable. "Welcome to Willow Creek Estates," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Margaret Hayes, the HOA president. I thought I'd drop by and give you a rundown of our community guidelines." I forced a smile and accepted the binder, already feeling the weight of her scrutiny. Over the next few months, Margaret's constant nitpicking became a regular part of my life. From the height of my grass to the color of my curtains, nothing escaped her critical eye. When I finally decided to take a much-needed vacation to Italy, I thought I could escape Margaret's watchful gaze for a couple of weeks. I hired a house sitter, a responsible young woman named Emily, to look after my home while I was away. The trip was everything I had hoped for: delicious food, stunning architecture, and a chance to unwind. But my peace was shattered the moment I returned home. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something was off. The garden gnome I had placed by the front door was now in the garage, facing the wrong way. My heart sank. Someone had been inside my house. I quickly checked the security camera footage I had installed before Leah VYing. The cameras were a point of contention with Margaret, who had argued they were unsightly and invasive. But now I was grateful for them. The footage showed Margaret marching up to my front door 4 days ago, holding what appeared to be my spare house keys. She unlocked the door and disappeared inside for nearly 20 minutes before Leah VYing with a satisfied smile on her face. I was furious. How had she gotten my keys? And what possible justification could she have for entering my home without permission? I decided to confront Margaret directly. I found her in her front yard, meticulously measuring the height of her hedge with a ruler. Her perfectly coiffed hair and pastel cardigan made her look like the picture of suburban perfection. "Good afternoon, Margaret," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do you have a moment to chat about why you entered my house while I was on vacation?" She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about. I certainly never entered your home, Yin VY Ted." I showed her the security footage, and for a brief moment, panic flashed across her face. But she quickly recovered, claiming she had entered my home to investigate a reported water leak. "Interesting," I said, raising an eyebrow. "So you filed an emergency incident report, notified me through the emergency contact information, and contacted the association's approved plumber?" Her face flushed red. I determined after inspection that it was a false alarm. No report was necessary. I sighed, dropping the pleasant facade. "Margaret, let me be clear. I have VY Deo, EVY Denke of you entering my home without permission. That's breaking and entering. I have reason to believe you took my house keys from my house sitter without consent. That's theft. These are criminal matters, not HOA violations." The next day, instead of an apology letter, I received a certified notice of HOA violations. Margaret had cited everything from unauthorized security equipment to decorative lawn ornament placement. Each violation carried a due 100 daily fine until resolved. But Margaret had made a critical error. In documenting what she saw inside my house, she had effectively admitted in writing to entering my home. It was time to bring out the big guns. I spent the evening re-VYing the HOA bylaws and state property laws. The next morning, I put on my best suit and went door to door, sharing my experience with my neighbors. The floodgates opened. Margaret had made a habit of abusing her position, entering homes and backyards without permission, and using her access to garage door codes to inspect for violations. By midday, I had statements from 12 households documenting Margaret's pattern of intrusive VY. I also discovered that the HOA board had not held elections in nearly 3 years, with meetings consistently rescheduled or canceled whenever election questions arose. Armed with this information, I drafted a formal petition signed by over 50 fan-tram of homeowners demanding an emergency HOA meeting to address these concerns and hold the long-overdue election. I also prepared a formal legal complaint, ready to file with the county courthouse. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The community center had never been so packed. Neighbors who had never attended before showed up in force, nodding to me in solidarity as they took their seats. Margaret sat at the front table with the other board members, her expression a mixture of disdain and nervousness. Before the meeting began, I stood up and addressed the procedural matter of the overdue elections. A chorus of "I second that motion" echoed through the room. Margaret's knuckles turned white as she gripped the edge of the table. "That's not on the agenda for tonight's meeting," she said, her voice rising. But the bylaws clearly stated that elections took precedence over other business when they were overdue. The election was conducted by secret ballot, and the results were unequivocal. Margaret received exactly 3 votes. The new board would consist entirely of fresh faces, including me as the new VYC president. As the meeting concluded and people began to leave, I approached Margaret, who sat alone at the front table, staring at the election results in disbelief. "Margaret," I said quietly, "there's still the matter of you entering my home illegally. The new board will need to decide whether to involve law enforcement or handle this internally." She looked up at me, her perfectly made-up face now streaked with tears. "You don't understand. This neighborhood, this position, it's all I have. My husband left last year, my kids are gone. Being HOA president gave me purpose." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The board meeting to discuss this matter will be next Thursday at 7 o'clock, I said. "You'll have an opportunity to explain your actions then. I suggest you prepare accordingly." As I turned to leave, she called after me, her voice cracking with emotion. "You planned this all along, didn't you? From the day you moved in, with your fancy job and your knowledge of the rules. You were just waiting for me to make a mistake." I stopped and looked back at her. "No, Margaret. I was just waiting for my vacation. You did the rest all by yourself." Margaret's face crumpled as the reality of her situation sank in. Her reign as the neighborhood's most feared resident was over, brought down by her own belief that the rules didn't apply to her. As I watched her gather her designer handbag and perfectly organized meeting materials, I knew that losing her position was just the beginning of her consequences. The board would likely require her to pay for a full financial audit, covering thousands in accounting fees from personal funds. If any funds were misappropriated, even for seemingly minor expenses, she could face more serious legal repercussions. But watching her walk out of the community center, shoulders slumped in defeat, no longer the proud HOA tyrant who had terrorized a neighborhood for years, I realized something important. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom. Sometimes it just needs neighbors willing to stand together and say, "Enough is enough." With Margaret's reign of terror finally over, the neighborhood began to heal. The new board, led by myself and a few other dedicated homeowners, worked tirelessly to restore trust and transparency within the community. We held regular meetings, updated the bylaws to prevent future abuses of power, and ensured that all financial records were open and accessible to every homeowner. Margaret, now stripped of her position and facing the consequences of her actions, became a shadow of her former self. She rarely left her house, and when she did, it was with averted eyes and a hurried pace. The neighborhood, once under her iron grip, now flourished with a renewed sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. As for me, I learned that standing up for what's right, even in the face of overwhelming opposition, is always worth it. The experience brought me closer to my neighbors, and together, we built a community that truly felt like home. Years later, as I sat on my porch, sipping a cup of coffee and watching the kids play in the street, I couldn't help but smile. Willow Creek Estates had become everything I had hoped for when I first moved in a peaceful, welcoming community where everyone looked out for one another. Margaret's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. But it also served as a testament to the strength of unity and the power of standing together. As the sun set over the tree-lined streets, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served, not through the courts, but through the collective will of a neighborhood that refused to be bullied. And in the end, that was the most powerful justice of all. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.